Welcome to episode 2 of the Hidden London Hangouts. First of all, thank you so much for all the loveliness and the warmth that you showed us after episode 1. We've been bowled over by it, to be honest. We didn't quite expect the love to come in episode 1 that came, which is marvellous. We had people tuning in New York, Washington, DC, Barcelona, and Kentish Town. It's been amazing. I'm going to get that into every episode, okay? Kentish Town is my station that I'm going to mention in every one. Today, we've got a great episode for you. We've got 3 cities slideshows with loads of pictures. We've got a great tale to tell you about Charing Cross, and we'll be answering your viewer and listener questions. So first of all, let's just introduce the team. I don't do this alone. I've got 3 amazing people from the London Transport Museum to help me. First of all, Chris Nix, what's your name and where do you come from?
So I come from Manchester originally, but I've lived in London for 20 years now, and I'm currently the Assistant Director at London Transport Museum, who looks after the collections and the learning team. And it's my privilege to be part of Hidden London on the content side of it.
And you've got a much, much nicer mug this week. You were very disappointed last week, but it's much nicer this week.
Yeah, I had some feedback from colleagues that my white mug was a bit boring. So this is my Down Street Hidden London mug, and tea does taste better out of it.
It's beautiful. I've slimmed down my Johnson. I've got a big A on one side and a little A on the other. So there we are. That's mine today. Siddy Holloway, what's your name and where do you come from?
So my name is Siddy Holloway, although I originally come from Iceland, and Siddy Holloway is actually my stage name. I have a far longer Icelandic name, and funnily enough, I chose the surname Holloway because of Holloway Road tube station.
Get away, really?
Yeah, it was a really weird one. I was graduating drama school many years ago, and I've always been called Siddy, but my last name is Ingolfsdottir, which is a very difficult name to pronounce for many. So I was trying to figure out an English-sounding surname, and I was on the Piccadilly line at the time, and the next stop was Holloway Road. And I thought, Siddy Holloway, that's got a good ring to it.
That's a proper actress's name, isn't it? That's a proper actress's name. And am I right in thinking that your mother's actually called Björk?
My mother's middle name is Björk, yes. So my mother's called Margaret Björk.
This is brilliant. Absolutely love it. And Laura Hilton Brown, what's your name and where do you come from?
Hi, Alex. I am originally from the north as well, but obviously reside down here in London now. And I programme manage Hidden London, which I always describe it as I am one vertebrae in the amazing backbone of the Hidden London programme. So I'm really lucky to work with a group of exceptionally talented storytellers, creative minds, writers.
Fabulous people, amazing folk.
Exactly, but I don't want to forget the delivery team because they are absolutely superb, and we have such a great team. I'm really proud to work with them.
Oh, it sounds so nice, and thank you for allowing me into your little party as well. Laura, you also get the chance to describe me.
Oh, that's interesting. I feel that's great. So, Alex, you are a broadcaster and presenter and interviewer. You obviously work a lot on radio, which is fantastic. I don't know how we found you, but we did. And to me, you are Hidden London. You represent the curious, the little bit of the geek, the enthusiast, and I love that we try and programme all of our tours for such a diverse audience, and you are it. You are everything in one.
I'm the guinea pig, really, aren't I? This is marvellous. It's funny, you know, thank you very much for that, Laura. I got a bit of feedback of my own after last week's episode, and there were 2 things. Someone said, well, thankfully you wore a shirt. That was the first one, and I'd like to say that I've chosen a shirt today which is, I think, very much akin to the 1959 tube stop.
Ooh.
Do you not think I look like I'm wearing mock
Yeah,
hair?
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Either that or a picnic blanket. And the other person said, you didn't make much of an effort with your backdrop, did you? So I've actually swiveled the table round and I'm the other side of the room today. So, I mean, it looks like I'm in Kew Gardens, to be honest, but here's where we are.
Classy dresser all round.
And didn't mention the Johnson font. How lovely. Now then, So we're going to start today just with a little background of Hidden London, because it is something which has become pretty amazing and a lot of people know about it in London. But in case you don't, Chris Nix, just give us a potted history of Hidden London.
So Hidden London is really about satisfying people's curiosity about what lies beyond all those anonymous doors and hidden parts of the tube, and it's more of a kind of a state of mind than a sort of tangible thing. It's about how people think and want to know what those forbidden spaces look like. But it's really had about a 30-year journey to get to where it is now. The museum always used to run curator-led tours of places like Aldwych and Down Street, but didn't do it very often. And so really, Laura mentioned last week about the Blitz event at Aldwych back in 2010. That gave things a big shot in the arm, showing that we could run events on a large scale successfully and safely in a space like that. And then when we got to 2014, we really put that on steroids and realised that there was a bigger market there, and people who really wanted to be able to see these places meant that we needed to expand it. And that's what we did. We put together a team. We've expanded the range of places that you can go to see and the number of people who get to do it.
And there are some pretty cool places. And I have to say, Siddy, what always makes me laugh is how you describe how filthy you get when you visit these places. Because I've always said you and Chris are like urban explorers, legal urban explorers. But you do get really rather dirty down there, don't you?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there is no you can't really describe the level of dirt that you find in some of these places. Particularly, I remember when we were doing the photography project. By the way, I'm the engagement manager for the Hidden London program. I totally even forgot to say that when I was talking about my last name. But we were once doing a lot of photography in all these different spaces, and that's why we've got so many great photos to show people. And we were shifting something, and just this giant mountain of dirt came tumbling over my head, effectively turning my hair grey. And I came back into the office and I sat down and I just went, "Ugh, I'm so filthy." And Chris has never found anything as funny as that.
Oh, this is fantastic. And I mean, there are certain places that Chris has taken me down these tube stations, and you will open a door and you'll be in the middle of a fan shaft, and all of a sudden there'll just be filth flies at you. It's the most disgusting thing, really, but there's something kind of grimy and cool about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, Chris never. I started doing this this skin regime about 4 years back, because I really realised that I needed to have some just face masks to pull all of that grime out of my skin that used bentonite clay. And Chris thought that was very fascinating, as that was used to build the Jubilee line, wasn't it, Chris?
Oh, I love this. A little bit of gossip there. You really get it all on this podcast, this Hidden London Hangout, don't you? Because ultimately we're getting skincare tips, we're getting sartorial elegance from my shirts. This is fantastic. A little bit of administration first. Make sure you subscribe just below. Just click subscribe, and then you'll see all of the updates. And also interact with us, because while we're broadcasting this, we're watching what the questions are that come in. If you've got a question for us, we can answer it. And also give us comments as well. If you like what we're doing, let us know, because we want to know. At LT Museum is the Instagram to follow as well, at LT Museum. Now, coming up later on, we've got some questions from you, which are all fabulous questions, by the way. And Laura, your roundel is a clue to one of those questions, isn't it?
It is indeed. So today I have Mind the Gap, and we had a fantastic question, which I'm sure you'll tell us all later.
We will indeed. So let's crack on. We last time looked at Aldwych. When it started, it was called Strand. Down the Strand, the road in London, there was another Strand. And there was a Trafalgar Square station. And there was a Charing Cross station. Only the thing is, the names are all very confusing. And in the next 30 minutes, you are going to find out just how confusing it all got. Because Charing Cross, as we see it today, as we know it today, is not the station that it was when it opened up. It certainly wasn't called that. Chris Nix takes up the story.
So originally, there were two stations very close to each other that are now joined together as Charing Cross. They were the Bakerloo line's Trafalgar Square and what we now know as the Northern Line, the Strand station, which borrowed its name from Aldwych up the road. Now, those two stations existed very closely to each other for many years, and if you wanted to change between them, you'd have to come up out of one station, walk down the street a short way, and then go down into the other one to catch your train. That was until a new line was being built in the 70s, known as the Fleet Line, which became known when it opened as the Jubilee Line. And that was the opportunity taken to join those two stations together by putting a third set of platforms in between the existing Northern Line and Bakerloo Line, and to create an interchange between them. It also took the name Charing Cross from what we now know as Embankment Station and applied it to that station. So that's basically how the station came about. And we'll unpack a little bit more of what it looks like and some of the detail as we look at some photos a little later on.
Amazing. So to recap, Aldwych started off as Strand but became Aldwych. Charing Cross started off as Strand and Trafalgar Square stations. Neither of those names exist anymore. Meanwhile, down Villiers Street at Embankment, that was actually called Charing Cross. And then the magic happened in the 1970s. Siddy, we need to go down into the dirt, down into the tracks with Siddy's slideshow. Episode 1, there are 3 of them today, 3 lots of pictures. I mean, that looks fabulous.
Doesn't it just? So here we have the abandoned platforms of the Fleet Line, what we now know as the Jubilee Line at Charing Cross. And so this was shot last year. Actually, was it? No. 2018, in fact.
18 months ago.
Time goes by really quickly. And one of the telltales, sort of signs that you are at Charing Cross is that you can see the ceiling is actually missing from Charing Cross Station. Those abandoned platforms.
No, interestingly, that is because that's because of the insulation or the covering, isn't it?
Exactly. So there used to be an acoustic ceiling there, which was made out of formica, which is a type of plastic that turns out it burns at very high heats, which is this was found out in 1987 during the King's Cross fire. So it was stripped out of the underground, but by the time it was stripped out, they realized they were closing Charing Cross at the end of the 90s. And so they never bothered to replace it, really. Next slide, we're going to see the abandoned escalators at Charing Cross.
I like that.
Just to the kind of upper left corner, you can see it says way out the Strand. So that's where you would have exited to go to either the Northern Line or the Strand itself. Now, this is what the concourse looks like today. You may recognize it as it's been used for many things, such as filming. Now, of course, here you can just see that it used to be the terminus of the Jubilee Line before the Jubilee Line got extended. And it sort of, as you can see, it's got a little kind of map there. Now, then we go into some of the other parts.
That looks lovely. Now, that looks like that extra tunnel that goes up towards Trafalgar Square.
It is. That's the construction tunnel of the entire complex. And I believe Laura's going to tell us a bit more about that.
How did this come about, Laura? Because my understanding is that because it was a station that was right in the middle of London, they had issues getting the muck out that they excavated. Is that right?
They did. As far as I know, it's like this is great to have on the tour. I get very excited about when we can make tours and the route takes us into such kind of, phenomenal places as this. So this was a secret tunnel built underneath Trafalgar Square. And I think it was due when the construction of the Fleet Line started in 1972. And I think that they removed thousands of tons of soil from here when they wanted to build the deep level platforms at Charing Cross. And what's great about this is that it goes, you go behind this crazy little corrugated door, you step away from the main commuter passageway, and there's 2 of our colleagues there walking down. It's a little bit eerie, it's quite quiet, I always find it's, the further towards Trafalgar Square you get, it's a little bit chilly, like the temperature drops. And you also drop in terms of you're much further underground by the time you get to Trafalgar Square. And we take people right the way underneath the fourth plinth. And if you think you've got Trafalgar Square at the top, it's busy, it's bustling, and then you're underneath and you've walked down this really dark, kind of quite eerie tunnel, and it's so peaceful, it's super quiet. And I always get a little goosebump moment there, because you are directly underneath the fourth plinth, which is so busy, but there you are in this really quiet kind of, I was talking to Chris about this before, and it's a little bit cave-like. It drops in depth, it's chilly, there's a bit of an echo, you can see muters walking past the door at the end, you can sometimes hear the buskers, and I just love this part of the tour. For me, it's one of my favourite bits.
I love it. And some of the tunnel is actually made up out of parts of tunnel ring that were left over from when they were building the Victoria line. So this is a bit of a hodgepodge of a tunnel, but it's still incredibly evocative when you go down there. Thank you very much, Siddy, for those amazing pictures.
Right, I've got a couple more actually.
Awesome.
This is a part of the ventilation shaft. And the reason why I put that in, and I'm going to show you more of that ventilation shaft later, but it's just to highlight that in order to get ready for the Hidden London tours, we have to do a lot of strange things that people might not think about. One of those things was, for example, to get all of those yellow bits that you see on there painted yellow. Because, of course, these spaces are not used by the public. So there's no need for people to think about, oh, I must duck here or mind my step here and there. But, of course, when we are making them available to the public, we have to do these sort of strange things. And the last one I'm going to leave you with is just this one, where you can see a passenger just beyond where we take people.
I love this. In a minute, we're going to be talking about the joys of film and TV down in that tube station. But before we do that, I just want to talk to Chris, just very briefly, about the fact that although we say that Charing Cross Jubilee Line platforms are no longer in use, they are actually in use, aren't they, Chris?
Yeah, there's a weirdly technical term which is used on the Underground called non-operational, which means that we might not have customers using the station to catch trains, but it is still used. And arguably, Charing Cross can be busier as a non-operational station than it would be as an operational station. So spare trains can be stored there in advance of events. Filming, as you've just mentioned, can sometimes render it very, very busy and crowded. And also for engineering. So it's used for testing all kinds of surfaces, different engineering techniques, and for storing engineering trains. So we'll see a little bit of that later too, I think.
And the Overrun Tunnel, because where the platforms end, this tunnel continues quite a long way along the Strand. You can store trains in there as well, can't you, in busy days?
That's right, yeah. They're actually very long, those tunnels. They go most of the way down the Strand, almost to Aldwych, and so you can store 6 trains in total through on each platform and Overrun Tunnel.
Amazing. Now, we talked about films a few minutes ago. At the weekend, I happened to be watching a bit of James Bond. I'm not a massive Bond fan, but I do get quite excited when I see a tube station in a Bond film. And strangely, Charing Cross is certainly a station which is now used for film and video. And so Siddy and Laura, our 2 Bond girls, tell us the joys and delights of film and TV at Charing Cross. And I have to say, one of those things is another Siddy slideshow of film and TV moments.
We work really closely with the TfL Film Office, who are a great group that obviously commission lots of TV and film on Underground. And Charing Cross lends itself really, really well to a more kind of contemporary feel of movie. There's been loads that have been shot down there, and we talk about it quite a lot on our tour. I don't know how you're not a Bond fan, Alex, but that Skyfall is a big one that's down there, and the Bourne trilogy as well. And I think Siddy's got some great shots coming up that the TfL Film Office have given us so that we could show them today.
So if you can
this is interesting. The first shot on Siddy's slideshow, I'm just looking at it now, is Charing Cross Station labelled Temple, Siddy?
Yeah, so if you've ever, you watched Skyfall this weekend, so you might have noticed that as Bond is chasing Silver, which is played by Javier Bardem, who's the bad guy in the film, they're actually going through what he says is Temple Station, along with half of London. And then he gets off at Embankment Station. But those who are truly specialists and love the tube will notice that the train he jumps on is not a district line train. It is a deep level train that is used on the Jubilee line or the Northern line. And so Charing Cross Station was actually pretending to be both Temple and Embankment Station during that shoot. So you can see it just there. That's where it's pretending to be Embankment. And that's probably just to give a bit of credence to, well, I mean, where they're sort of supposed to be located and where the train's ultimately supposed to go, which is sort of around Westminster. And that's why they've moved it to the district line rather than, say, a deeper level tube. Now, this Skyfall is one of the biggest productions that's ever been made on the London Underground. About 500 cast and crew spent about 5 months in the Charing Cross complex, just trying to get about 10 minutes of footage, which eventually made it to the film. You can see sort of how much time it takes, of course, to set things up. And the beauty about Charing Cross is that it is still an operational station. You can get trains in there. You can actually do all sorts of stunts, of course, in some of which have to be done off-site. And maybe Chris can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, so sometimes it's very, very hard to see the join between the different scenes once movie magic is being worked. But, for example, some productions have gone as far as creating whole extra trains in the studio so that they can wreck them or do stunts around them. But a surprising amount of it can be done on the platforms at Charing Cross and then seamlessly blended in.
And there you can just see director Paul Greengrass, is that right, Laura?
That's correct, yeah. He did, was it Born
Born.
Ultimatum?
It was Born, I believe, the one where they're all at Waterloo. So Charing Cross takes it upon itself to become many stations on the London Underground. Now, one of the last ones I'm going to show you is that door is quite prevalent in the Skyfall movie. And there we see our friend, Daniel Craig.
Oh, look at that. That's amazing.
I think Alex has just become a fan again.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a fan of some of it, put it that way.
And there you go. Chris, do you want to tell us what's happening there?
Yeah, this is a bit of movie magic which I managed to be in. So I'm there in the middle of that group of 7 people heaving away on a train. And this was for a school underground safety film that I commissioned about 15 years ago, where I suddenly found myself part of the crew trying to bring the train to life. If you want to be able to film a sequence that looks like it's taking place on a moving train, you can't actually do that for real for safety reasons. But what you can do is put a bunch of people on each of the corners of the carriage and get the kinetic envelope, it's referred to, basically get the train moving, so that you've got to time it with end of one carriage moving one way while the other one's swinging the other way, and then inside the camera angle looks like you've got a moving train. With
so
all the
you use
kind
phrase
of
kinetic envelope. You mean rocket, don't you?
The kinetic envelope is the shape that the carriage occupies when it's moving.
I love that. That's amazing. I like a kinetic envelope. I really do. That's absolutely fantastic. Diddy, they are fantastic. And you know, there is this third slideshow, and I have fought hard for this to be included in this Hidden London Hangout today. This, you can imagine, this is 2 stations which have been knocked into one at Charing Cross, Trafalgar Square and Strand. And there are parts of that station which are quite clearly off limits for health and safety reasons, because we can't take big groups of people down there. I certainly couldn't be, but I was allowed to go and have a look around some of those places, and I wanted to share some of the pictures with you where we get to see some of the most amazing parts of that station that sadly we'll never get to see as a group.
first one that you see here has to do with testing of materials. Have you guys been around the tube lately and seen that in some stations they've got a continuous screen that is advertising to you?
Yes, I've seen those. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what they're doing there. They're testing out that technology before it was rolled out to the entirety of the network. And something similar that you see here. Chris, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure, yeah. So this was a test which took place a couple of years ago, where LED light panels were installed on the bottom third of the escalators, Newell panels on the side, to see whether it produced enough light to fill the whole space with the escalators in it. It's quite a clever idea because it means that you don't then start having to put up ladders or scaffolding to replace the lighting tubes over the escalators. So good maintenance and a lot more efficient.
And for anyone who spends a lot of money on shoes, you get to see them really, really well lit as well.
That
And
was, of course, on the list too.
You can sort of pretend you're on Blade Runner or something.
Good work.
Now, the next one is an engineering train. I've got 3 photos of an engineering train in the platform. Chris, do you want to tell us a bit more about them?
Yeah, so this is what's known as a grinder train, and
just don't go there. Don't go there.
That's genuinely what it's called. I know you think there might be an app for it, but no, it's basically it's there for keeping the rails quiet. We all appreciate this without actually knowing it's there. You know, when you get wheels squealing on the tracks a little bit, it's because the wheels tend to rough up the rails and the rails rough up the wheels, and when they get together they make a squeaking sound. This periodically is sent down the track to grind the top surface of the rail back to the correct profile, and that helps to keep the wheels quiet on your train.
There you go. That's the grinder. Grinder. That is. Now, this here is a part of the ventilation shaft that we take people into, but this is at the bottom of that shaft.
So this was a photo from a very long time ago, actually before the tours began. We take people to stand on that platform, as Sidney said, that you can see there. But this is a shot which we never get to take again, as we can't go down that ladder anymore. But that is where you see James Bond establishing his shot underground, cocking his gun and heading down to chase down the villain. And that is the rather impressive view up the Craven Street ventilation shaft.
That's phenomenal. That is absolutely phenomenal.
So that ventilation shaft from top to bottom is over 70 meters high. That's quite, you know, you could fit all of Nelson's column inside there.
Yeah.
Now, the next one, I promised you, is our...
Oh, here we go. As a tile fiend, I absolutely love this. This is one of the secret bits of the station that we're not allowed to see, isn't it, really?
Exactly. So when Trafalgar Square opened, it opened with lifts, as did all of central London stations back in the Edwardian times. And when the station was all remodeled, they took out the lifts. And these are the old lift landings of Trafalgar Square Station. Now, what's really interesting is that Trafalgar Square was one of the first stations on the Bakerloo line to be actually built. So one half of the lift landing is this beautiful green and brown color that you see there, but the other half is just white. Has no interesting kind of pattern to it or anything like that. And we think that was because that was constructed before the company was taken over by Charles Tyson Yerkes, who was a man who kind of established many of the underground lines. And then what we found, lastly, we found this little S, which was stenciled in.
And does anyone know what that S means? Because it appears in a lot of stations, and I've never got an answer as to what that S actually means.
No, well, we have an S in some places, we have a G in some places as well, and we've also seen an F. So some have mentioned this may be some sort of kind of location, a way of tracking locations within stations way back in maybe say Edwardian times. If any of our viewers know the answer, please do give us tell us the answer, please. We don't know yet.
It's also worth just mentioning while you've got that image up that those tiles are actually glass. So most of the tiles that you see on the underground are ceramic. So the green ones in the previous slide were all, sorry, in the last but one, that one, those are all ceramic tiles, which is what you see in most of the tube. But yeah, those last ones we're looking at are glass, and those are quite unusual. There aren't that many locations that have glass tiles surviving.
You have made my day by including those last two pictures. They are so, so gorgeous. I love, love, love old tiles on the tube, and they have made my day. So just to recap then, Charing Cross Station as we know it is 2 stations effectively knocked into one. And there are secret bits of that you have just seen on this wonderful Hidden London Hangout. Thank you very much indeed, team. Now, interestingly, while we're in the Charing Cross area, we need to bring in the questions from our lovely viewers and listeners, because the first question has come from Andrina, and it's really pertinent to the fact that we're talking about this, because it's about the voice of Embankment Station. And the question is, who was the voice of Embankment and what happened? Because there must be a story there. And sure enough, Siddy, there is a story to this, isn't there?
There is a story, and Laura and I were actually talking about it earlier. The story is of an actor called Oswald Lorenz, who was one of the first actors that recorded the very iconic Mind the Gap. And now, Laura, you've obviously got Mind the Gap right there, so that's why you put that on, of course. Oswald Lorenz, he was an actor, and he fell in love with his wife back in 1992, and he sadly passed away in 2007. But she would often go down to Embankment and listen to his Mind the Gap. And I've actually got it just here, if you can try to hear it. I hope it works.
Him? That's him. I love that. So boom, Mind the Gap. It's so British, isn't it? It's such an incredibly British noise. And I was thinking about this. When you think about the Routemaster bus, you know the ding ding. We all know the sound of a black cab pulling away. When it comes to London Underground, the Mind the Gap is kind of, it's the sound that everybody knows in London, isn't it, Siddy?
It really is. And also, like, I think the use of the word mind as well is so incredibly British, because, you know, it's something that you don't use in America, and so it's just become super emblematic with London. But the sad thing, well, the story of Oswald, kind of ends in that way, that they actually decided to re-record the Mind the Gaps all on the network. And one day his wife went down to Embankment Station, and she couldn't hear his voice anymore. And she was so saddened by this that she contacted TfL, who decided to keep Oswald's voice on that platform in 2013, and also give her a CD of that recording. So that's the voice that you still hear on the Northern Line curved platform at Embankment Station.
And I love the fact that the reason it's so curved, because if you go to the southbound platform, it's pretty much straight, but the northbound one on the Northern Line is very, very bendy. And it's because when the Northern Line was in its previous name, the Charing Cross, Euston and Hampstead Railway, is that right, Chris?
It is, that's correct.
Oh, I'm glad I got that bit right.
Well,
I'm so glad. There was a loop that took the trains right round without the driver having to move. It was like the Kennington loop we talked about last time. And the northbound platform is actually built on that loop, which is why it's on such a tight bend, which is why you need the Mind the Gap, which is why we've got Oswald, and why Oswald lasts to this very day, which is lovely. It's a really sweet story. Question number 2 from Sam Hayden Allen on Instagram. He said, London Underground's got a World War II bunker. Is this true, Chris?
It is true. It's got more than one. I mean, I'm sporting the mug of one of them at Down Street. It built a number of wartime bunkers in the Second World War, and it actually carried on doing that with at least one in the Cold War as well. I think it's such a huge subject to cover. It'll be one for a future hangout. But yeah, because the tube stations are deep underground during the Second World War, it meant that they were very good improvised bomb shelters and bunkers.
Let's grab a pith helmet. We'll do that as a separate tour. I think that sounds absolutely fantastic. And question number 3, I'm rattling through it because we're well over time today, but I hope you're enjoying it anyway. Andy Davis on Instagram says, oh no, this is a proper geeks question. Which station has the greatest number of passenger tunnels? I'm just going to throw it out. Does anyone know the answer to this?
Yeah, that is a very, very difficult question. I think you could have a crack at it in a number of ways, just by thinking about stations which have got a lot of lines in them and complex interchanges, particularly ones which have had a lot of work done to them or additions. So Charing Cross has quite a lot. But if you think about ones like Baker Street, Waterloo, King's Cross is one which has a huge, I think King's Cross would definitely be a contender. King's Cross and Pancras.
Yeah. Or maybe Green Park has got quite a long passenger tunnel between some of the older parts, newer parts of the station.
Which is phenomenally well tiled, I have to say as well. What I love about the tile work there is it goes from, at the Piccadilly line end, it's mostly dark blue. And as you get towards another line, maybe the Jubilee, it goes mostly grey. It's a really clever bit of tile work. And I only spotted it the other day. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's of course silver, being the Jubilee line.
Silver, yes.
You're being on brand.
This is where the old, this is where you've got to get the words right, isn't it? Honestly. Thank you very much. So Andy and Sam and Andrina, thank you so much for your questions. If you've got questions as well, just put it below this. Type it out, stick it down there, and we will get them answered. If you've got other questions, go to the LT Museum Instagram page, drop them a message, and we'll get those questions as well. And if you want to find out more, LT Museum website, ltmuseum.co.uk. Guys, thank you so much once again for an amazing hangout. Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex.
And Siddy, thank you very much. You're looking gorgeous as always.
Thank you very much.
And Laura, you just look so lovely. And can I nick your lamp, please?
It's a lovely lamp, isn't it? You can have it.
Absolutely gorgeous. Maybe I'll nick the roundel as while we're at it and paint.
No.
I'm not having that. Okay. Well, listen, we'll be back next week with another amazing hangout. We'll be somewhere fantastic, answering your questions as well. So have yourself a great day. And in the meantime, stay safe.